Welcome, class, back to History 103. I'm here today in the castle of Ortenbourg, which is in Alsace, which is the easternmost region of France, and particularly my favorite part of France. This is a medieval castle, and I figured since this week the introduction to the primary source assignment on the Cathars is pretty well explained with the material that's already there, I would talk a little bit about castles. Because of course, I always joked when I taught this class that I would just name it knights and castles and stuff. Maybe another word starting with S there. So here are the castles. I've got no knights. I'm the best you've got for a knight. But they're really interesting. And this is a castle that has existed since the 12th century. And it's on top of a hill in Alsace. And I'll put up a photo so you can see how it sort of dominates the valley. And the purpose of this would have been a defensive fortification, also because it dominates the valley in such a way, if there were a problem, you could send your forces out, but they could always come back here and be safe. So you can see the main tower that's in the middle is, so the main tower that's in the middle is really high. I think it's something like 40 or 50 meters, which would be a number of feet. I don't know, it's an engineering college. One of you can calculate that. Something like 150 feet, we'll say. I can't estimate for anything anyhow. I'm a historian, not an estimator. So this was built in the 12th and 13th century, and you can kind of make out, and I'll put up some photos so you can see better, but there's the main tower that's in the middle and then the other walls that surround it. And that's a defensive move as well, because you have sort of the main tower, which is called the keep. And in the keep is where you sort of be your place of last resistance. And in this middle part would have been originally defensively, it would have been sort of the courtyard where the knights and everyone else could hang out. But as time went on, as there was less need for that, as they added actually another castle that I'll explain a little bit later, it became more of a seigneurial house. So if you look around, and I'm sure you've noticed as the video pans around, you see that there are windows that have little benches where you can sit by. There's old remnants of where the chimneys used to be. There's one on that side, one over there, and then they're sprinkled throughout here. So this was turned into the house where the Lord was. And you can see there were two floors. If you pay attention, you look sort of midway. You see where these stones that come out a little bit more, and that's where they would put the floorboards, so you could make sort of two levels out of this. And of course you can see that very well if you look on the southern wall. You can see how it juts out a little bit, and you can imagine that's where they would have put the boards that come across. And there would have been wooden pillars in the middle as well. But then you can see how that makes the floor level, and then people can go and they can sit at the window and look out over this beautiful view of the plains of Alsace. Which is my favorite region of France, and I'm not going to pretend to be not biased about it. But yeah, in terms of defensive fortifications, what you would have to do to get up here, and I'll add some photos later so you can see this, is you would be forced basically to go around the castle over and over again. And you can imagine as you're going up and around the castle, the whole time the people that are in the castle, that are defending the castle, are shooting down on you. And I'll make another video that I'll add at the end about another castle where you can really see this very clearly, where you had to enter sort of through the moat, which was never filled with water, but was still, it is still an obstacle that had to be overcome. Not every moat's filled with alligators and has water. That's kind of the myth that gets added later. But moats did exist. They were absolutely a real defensive function because it funneled people through this minor area. And the whole while you have people that are up in the castle that are shooting down on them with arrows or crossbows. You have people throwing down boiling water. Boiling pitch is boiling oil is a myth that's come down. But at the time, oil was so expensive, there was no way they were going to heat that up and throw it on the people they were trying to keep out. It's sort of one of those myths that exist, but they definitely boiled water because everyone had water. That was pretty easy to keep track of. And of course, throwing stones down as well. It was really bloody warfare at the time. So yeah, getting on to the history of this particular castle, there's another castle that was built, and I'll add some photos, and it's also the castle of Ramstein, which has nothing to do with the famous German rock band. But the castle of Ramstein, which was built to siege this fortress originally, and then after the siege was over, they kicked those people out, and they realized, it'd be kind of handy to have the second castle. So then they built it up from there. And I did a video there that I'll add on at the end that sort of explains in a little more detail, shows you how people had to come up and around through the moat to finally take down the castle. So these were intensely defensive fortifications. This is also on top of a hill that's very steep. I just hiked up it. I can absolutely assure you it is very steep. Of course, if me, the historian, can walk up it, it can't have been too bad. But I mean, you can just imagine having to do it wearing your chainmail, having your sword, and this stuff weighed a lot. It was definitely, to try and siege one of these places, it was an exploit. And this is why these places exist, and especially as you drive up and down Alsace, if you look up in the mountains, you'll always see castles on top, because it was a very defensive fortification. It was very hard to take these places, and it was really a stronghold for the people to go and work out. It was just a strong place where they could live from, where they could project their power, where if there was a problem they could send their soldiers up and the soldiers come back. It was very much a strong place to live. So I think that's everything I have for this particular location. A little bit about the history of Alsace, which I think you'll find interesting. If you remember back a couple weeks ago, and we talked about Charlemagne, who was sort of the Frankish emperor, the first Holy Roman Emperor and whatnot. When he died, he had his son, Louis the Pious. When he died, he split the kingdom between his three sons, and that starts France and Germany in this middle territory. So the oldest son, Lothar, was given the territory that was right in the middle. If you can imagine a map of Europe, that sort of spread France into middle Germany, the sort of big blob. So you had the other son who took the middle, Lothar, and parts of northern Italy up to the coast. And that's the part that Alsace is in. And Lothar gives his name to the area called Lorraine, which you may have heard of Alsace in regard to Alsace-Lorraine, which was the French territory that was taken by the Germans between 1870 and 1918. And then again during the Third Reich, during the Second World War between 1940 and 1945. So that's where most Americans have probably heard Alsace before. But yeah, so it was that middle territory, and then the other two sons, you had the son who got the German territory and the German who got the French. Well, what the two younger brothers did is, because younger brothers are always like that, they weren't too happy. So they conspired together to deprive Lothar of his inheritance, and they came together and they made a treaty called the Treaty of Verdun, which is sort of the first example we have of the French language in the Proto-Germanic languages. It's not written in Latin like a lot of things at the time. It's actually really cool on a level of the development of the French language, because we start to see things that become French. So what it is, they come together and they agree in this town in Verdun, which is again in this middle area, where they say, yeah, we're going to kick Lothar out and then we're going to divide this territory up. And you see from this time in the 9th century, what becomes France and what becomes Germany continue to fight over the area of Alsace for up until pretty much 1945, when Europe starts to move in more of a let's stop fighting land battles, battles over land and killing people, and more towards economic prosperity and being nice with the European Union and everything that comes out of it. But yeah, this is a territory that was always fought over. And it's fought over because back during the 19th century, it had a lot of coal, and especially in Lorraine, it had a lot of industry. But even throughout the time, it was a very rich land. The Rhine River runs just along the coast here. Because if you imagine Alsace, it's this big, long thing like this, and you have the mountains here, then it goes into the foothills where they grow a lot of wine, and the Alsatian wine is absolutely fantastic. I feel like I'm doing a tourist commercial for Alsace sometimes. And then you have the Rhine that goes like this, so it was huge in commerce. It ran the whole way, and it was a very rich area. They had tons of cities that had tremendous amounts of money, were very rich. So it was very much, it was a coveted territory for a long time. So that's why they had to have these strongholds, these castles. And this would have been a territory. Now it's in France. As we talked, France and Germany went over it. At the time, it would have been part of the Holy Roman Empire, which is in a way a precursor to Germany, but not really. It was kind of its own separate thing. It's explained in the book. But yeah, it would have been here, and there were a bunch of free cities that emphasize commerce. We've talked a lot about commerce. Now cities rise up, and we had in the Holy Roman Empire this phenomenon called the free cities of the empire, which weren't placed under any count or bishop, but they were free cities. The name is pretty clear. They only owed allegiance to the emperor. So Sélestat, which is where I'm staying tonight with some fantastic friends, Strasbourg, Colmar, Ribeauvillé, these were all free cities of the empire that had their own abilities to tax themselves, run themselves, and they became very rich off of this. So that ties into what we learned last week. Other than that, I think everything's set up. Your PSA is on the Cathar question. There's that, like I said, I put up there in the document, there's that part that goes ahead and explains everything very well. There's not really need for me to go into that per se. And of course, there's the bonus question as well, so don't forget to do that if you want to get some bonus onto your overall grade. And yeah, that's everything. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch with me. I hope you all are having a great week, and have a good one. Bye. Alright class, just wanted to do another quick little video here to show you how the defensive would have worked. As you can see at the end there's that wall and there's a gate there, so that would have been sort of the first thing to attack. Then people would have had to come up here along this wall while people are shooting down at them, turn around, then go back up there. Meanwhile, the whole time there's the defensive fortifications there. So, alright, bye. Alright, and to complete the sort of defensive lecture, we're now sitting here in the moat, which you can see there's the cliffs on both sides. Sorry, the lighting, you know, it's morning, so the sun's a little weird. So anyhow, people would have had to come through here, mark through here. Again, remember, the whole while the castle and the keep is up there shooting down at them. While they're coming up here, turn around, marching, doing the whole medieval soldier thing, and then they would have gotten here to where this first gate is. And you can see those very thin window slats, and those are made to shoot. Now from the other end, they're kind of made like triangles. So the person can sort of maneuver around like this, but there's still only that little slit that people can shoot in at him. So that's sort of the defensive side of things. So yeah, this is the castle of Ortenbourg. I'm not really sure if you can tell up top. The sun's really not cooperating here today. But it's angled, and it was angled to be able to allow, you know, a little bit more defensive ability, because it was the angled wall. So if they were shooting any rocks out from like a trebuchet or a catapult, if they were amateurs, but if they were using a trebuchet, it would have blocked the shots a little bit easier. And it only has this angle on this side because the other side is just pretty much a sheer cliff down, so the trebuchet wouldn't have been built. But sort of up here, you can almost imagine they would have built some sort of siege equipment to be able to shoot across. But then again, it has that octagonal fortification, and it would have been quite difficult. Oh, and of course, at the very top you can see there's sort of the holes. Those are called crenellations. And again, defensively, what would have happened is the archers, the crossbowmen would have been at the top. They would have hid behind the tall part, and then when they were ready to shoot, they would have come out in the open and shot. So it was, again, another very defensive fortification there. So, all right, that's everything. Thanks so much, and enjoy. Bye. Yeah, so you can see it a lot easier. First of all, how it's angled in such a way it almost looks like a ship that has its bow on this particular end. But then you see all the windows that are very thin slits. And again, that's a defensive thing. That's so people can shoot out quite easily and have a very large range of motion. But so the people that are trying to shoot back don't have a very good target to hit. So, all right, cool. Alright, we're here at the Chateau of Ramstein, which is just outside of Scherwiller in Alsace, which is in France. It's a ruined medieval castle, as you can see, and I'm going to explain a little bit how defensive fortifications work. So if you wanted to come up here, and I'll put some pictures either before or after, where you can see how utterly, you know, this is up on top of a mountain here, and it would protect the valley and everything. But if you wanted to assault this castle, what you would be forced to do is you'd be forced to come around, and that would be the principal entry down there. So it'd be all defended, and as you were coming around the other way behind the castle, you'd have the people that were in this castle shooting down at you. Then if you were somehow able to break through there, you would have to come here through the moat, which wasn't filled with water, but as you can see, it would really be a pain in the ass to try and assault this. So what you'd have to do is then go around, and that is the way you'd make your principal entry into the castle. So, yeah, kind of a little bit of an idea of how medieval fortifications worked, and give you a sense of how that worked. We'll hopefully have some more for you later, and I can do some good editing. Voila.